everybody, and welcome in to Blue Jays Today, where you always have something to say with the Toronto Blue Jays. I'm your host, Nicholas Playalog.
And I'm your host, Adam Patron. And today, guys, the Blue Jays last night got unfortunate news, and that is that Pete Alosno signed back with the New York Mets. And we were kind of coming to the conclusion that the Blue Jays weren't going to get Pete Alosno, but regardless, the Blue Jays do got to pivot a little bit and look elsewhere. Where are the next moves coming for the Toronto Blue Jays? We're going to talk about that and more in this podcast. Before we do, guys, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to Blue Jays Today. So obviously, man, we went through it all last 2 weeks with Pete Alosno. We thought he was this close to becoming a Toronto Blue Jay. Inevitably, he goes back to the Mets, the team that he wanted to go for. And honestly, just to talk about that contract, wow, what a great deal for the New York Mets.
Crazy, dude. It just goes to show that, he must have been so committed to returning there.
Yeah.
Because on the deal that they got him on, it's a 2-year deal, $54 million. There is an opt-out after year one, but it's one of those deals that makes you go, geez, we couldn't have beat that.
Nah.
I think they could have. I really do believe that Toronto would have been capable to, and probably a lot of other teams too. I just think that Pete Alosno was just so committed to being a New York Met that, he had locked it in his brain. He is going to go back there, and regardless of the contract, it was going to happen. So, honestly, GG's. I hope you do really well. I hope you knock off the Dodgers in the playoffs. Would have loved for you to come here, but, he seems like he already predetermined that's where he was going to go.
Yeah, there had to be a magical number that was astronomical for him to convince him to leave, New York. Seriously, we apparently had an offer of $70 million on the table.
Right.
3 years. That wasn't enough. It had to be above and beyond to get him out there. But regardless, he is gone, and we can finally move on from the whole Pete Alosno thing, and we can talk about what the Blue Jays need to do next in their moves, right?
And honestly, I want to jump in there and say, again, we got Santander, which is the big time bat, and for me, it's I really did want Pete Alosno, and I'm upset that he ended up going to the New York Mets. However, there is a deadline here. February 17th. We are not that far away from the Vladimir Guerrero Jr. extension deadline. And if I had to choose between, signing Pete Alosno or extending Vlady, I am obviously going to choose to extend Vlady. That is where right now I hope their main focus is the Toronto Blue Jays front office is going to be going to.
Yeah, right? It's got to be. Now, of course, they could have done both in this dream reality where they got Guerrero and they got Alonso. That would have been nice. But yeah, no, seriously, the next move needs to be Vladimir Guerrero Jr. This Jays Journal article, shout out to them, is talking about the next 3 moves they can make after Pete Alosno. Now, the skip down to number 2, it is to look and extend Vladimir Guerrero Jr., right? And, you bring up that whole, 17th deadline. That is the day before Vladimir Guerrero Jr. actually shows up to camp for the first time. So the Blue Jays now need to be putting all their attention there. And we actually receive some sort of interesting update from Hector Gomez that, hey, Blue Jay fans, it might be coming soon. This guy Hubble has been posting all over Twitter, posting a Vladdy clip every day until he signs, right? I think that's super awesome. And then Hector Gomez quote tweets saying, the wait will soon be over. And I hope he's right. Now, he's been right about a few things this offseason, like the Anthony Santander signing with the Blue Jays. He's been very connected to the Dominican market. And you just got to hope from a Blue Jay fan that, he's connected to this market as well, and that maybe the wait will soon be over. What do you make of this whole thing from Hector Gomez? Is he right? Take it with a grain of salt? What are you thinking?
This isn't the first time that he said this, and there's a couple ways to look at that, right? Because we've heard a couple times now from Hector Gomez that deal's progressing, it's looking better and better, wait's gonna be over very soon. So on one standpoint, you can kind of hang your hat and go, okay, well, this clearly he is hearing something. He's definitely hearing something, and clearly he is very confident about this because he has now posted about it, 2, 3, 4 separate times.
Right.
So on that side of things, if you're a glass half full type of guy, all right, great, we're feeling really good. On the other side of things, he was also kind of talking about Pete Alosno to the Toronto Blue Jays. At one point, he was saying that was kind of heating up. And obviously that wasn't the case. He has now posted about this Guerrero thing several times, but no deal's come yet. Right? So, the glass half full guy is going, well, wait a second. We've heard you say this now a couple times, and I'm not seeing any movement here. We're getting closer and closer to February 17th. There is a deadline here, guys. The clock is ticking. So, I do tend to lean on the more optimistic side of things because I just try to put myself in both shoes right now. From a Blue Jays front office standpoint, we all know how much Vladimir Guerrero Jr. means for this team, means for the marketing of this team, means for the finances of the team, means for everything, right? It is centered around Vlady. And we were talking about it on our Bad for Baseball show, just literally a couple minutes ago, talking about how I think an extension makes sense for Guerrero too, because ultimately, if you're getting a number right now that starts with a 4, right? We're talking $420 million. That to me seems worth it to mitigate the risk of playing a whole nother season where you could get injured. You might not play great. And then also too, the uncertainties of free agency. Where do you land with the Hector Gomez stuff right now? Are you more on the optimistic side, or what do you think?
Well, I mean, you kind of just covered everything right there, right? I mean, look, I take this with a grain of salt. I know I've said that time and time again. I could see a reality where the Blue Jays don't extend Vladimir Guerrero Jr. at all. I mean, yes, there's reports coming out there and speculation, oh, we're getting super, super close. And we might be, you never know. But maybe there's a number he's really fixated on. Maybe there's some opt-outs involved that he really wants included. Maybe the Blue Jays don't want included, et cetera, et cetera. We don't know until it's officially done. And this thing could ride up until the very end. Like, if he is going to sign, I think it's going to be like right before that deadline, because they're going to want to squeeze in as much negotiation as possible. This is a big time decision for the Toronto Blue Jays. This could make or break your franchise in a positive or negative way. If you do sign Vladimir Guerrero Jr., well, now you have something to build off of next year. Yeah, you lose Bo Bichette, but you still got Vlady sticking around. You got Anthony Santander. You still got pieces in this team that you can build off. You still got Kevin Gausman, Jose Barrios. Yes, you lose Chris Bassett, but you can go get some other things. If you don't get it done, well, I mean, you're really going to have to figure out where this front office is next year. And also, from a Ross and Mark standpoint, this is a big decision for them, because this could make or break their tenure with the Toronto Blue Jays as well. If they let him go to free agency, well, am I going to have to fight against the Steve Cohens? Maybe not so much because Pete Alonso was there. We'll see how he does and whether he opt-outs or not. Am I going to have to fight with the Boston Red Sox or other sort of teams, or the LA Dodgers? These guys have to go, and they got to make a decision right now. What's best for this organization? And that's a lot. That's a big decision for 11 days, it coming down to it, wherever they are, seem to be in this negotiation.
For sure. And I do want to, I guess, play devil's advocate a little bit here. Like, we had Shai Davidi on, and he was talking about this and, suggesting it's like, gentlemen, like, from a fan standpoint, obviously we want Vlady, but there is a business side of this too. And there is a number that, when we get to it, might not look so good in a couple years, and even if Vlady, takes a step back too, because let's not forget that the 2 seasons before last year, that wasn't a $400 million guy, right? Like, that wasn't even maybe. Exactly. That wasn't even a $300 million guy. So there is definitely a number where, this could hurt the Blue Jays, in the future. And that is obviously what Ross and Mark are trying to go through right now. And I understand why we are at this point. I get how we got here. I just don't want to have to go through all of next season, watching Vlad, because here's the thing, right? You watch Vladdy have an amazing year. You watch Vladdy, hit 50 home runs.
Now the price is unbelievable.
Now the price is through the roof. Now we're looking at 500 million. And we're fighting Steve Cohen, and we're fighting the Yankees. You watch Vladdy have a bad year, and you're going, what?
Yeah.
Do we extend? What do we do now? Where do we go from that, right? Like, there's no outcome where you are going to enjoy as a fan watching Vladdy do his thing, because it's all going to tie together into free agency.
And I think that puts a lot of pressure on Vladimir Guerrero Jr. too. From his perspective alone, which we rarely talk about what we should be talking about. From his perspective alone, a lot of people out there saying, well, why? Of course Vlad's not going to extend right now because he's going to want to test the market. That's you assuming that Vladdy, obviously bets on himself and has a phenomenal year.
Exactly.
Like you alluded to, he's been up and down years. He's had an OPS start with a 1, a 9, an 8, and a 7 in his entire career. It's
Seriously.
very up and down, right? So, like, if I'm Vladimir Guerrero Jr., and if I'm getting an offer, and this is why I love the opt-outs for this, if I'm getting an offer from the Blue Jays right now, entering my free agency with the numbers I put up last year, up there in the batting average, second in batting average in the MLB, 900 OPS, 30 home runs, that is a great, if you put up that again, that's obviously a phenomenal year to go into free agency. But if you treat this like a free agency with the Toronto Blue Jays, get that extension done right now. And the reason why I bring up the opt-outs is because, look, you're protecting yourself, right? After year 5 or 6, if you include an opt-out, if you have a really great tenure in your peak, well, maybe you can go get an Aaron Judge type of contract, $300 million, and make even more money. But if you don't, and you fall off, and you're having these up and down, we don't know who you are, well, you're happy with your $400 million. And I think from Guerrero's standpoint, that makes a lot of sense from his perspective. But will the Blue Jays offer him that? That's the question.
Yeah, of course. And obviously, all of this depends on where their offer's at right now. Now, we've heard from Hector Gomez that it is getting closer and closer, which is really good news. But, to kind of circle it all back here, I land on the optimistic side of things. I do think that an extension is going to get done because ultimately, whoa, time for a quick shout out to the sponsor of this video. Hit your picks and knock it out of the park with Betway. Scan the QR code down below to join the action. Only available in Ontario. Must be 19 years of older to participate. Please play responsibly. Now, everyone, back to the content. I just look at it from Vladdy's standpoint, and I think that there is a lot more risk than reward going into next year. I think that the reward that you can get, basically to get any more money than what you think you're worth right now, you probably have to be a top 5 in MVP. And again, you're very capable of doing that. I wouldn't be shocked if that happens. But that's an ask. And, a lot of things need to go your way to have that happen. And then if all of those things fall, okay, maybe you get more money in free agency next year. But then too, you might not come back to Toronto. You don't know where you're going to land. Maybe you go to New York. Maybe you go to... We're not... There's a lot of uncertainty there. I just think ultimately it makes sense for both parties to agree on a nice number that probably starts with a 4 and maybe around that $420 million mark. Lock it in. Give the opt-outs that you're suggesting. At age 30, you get an opt-out. All of that just seems the easier pathway to me for both parties than, going through this whole year of headache and free agency and everything. So that is why ultimately I am optimistic right now.
I guess I'll play the other side. I think the cynic in me is coming out a little bit because I keep circling back to who's making the effing decision. It's Ross and it's Mark, and do they value Vladimir Guerrero Jr. the way they do? They don't even think he's a generational talent. I know that term gets thrown around loosely, but still, I mean, that's your guy, and we don't really know how they're valuing him. So for me, the cynic in me and the business side of me makes me feel like they're going to let the market determine what he is, and then either pay it or not pay it, and let that be a business decision. So I'm so in the middle. I'm 45 that they're going to do it, done 55 they're not going to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would feel like more times than not they don't.
And honestly, that's a super valid point, man. We do need to remember who is leading the charge right here, and sometimes logic doesn't always prevail.
Doesn't make sense.
When we're dealing with those guys. So that is all a factor. Either way, Hector's saying talks are progressing. We're hoping that we can believe him, everybody. You just miss out on Pete Alosno, so there's no other first baseman out there, that you can build your team around. It is Vladdy or it is bust, and we got 11 days to figure out whether or not they are going to lock him down for good, or we're going to have to go through the most fucking exhausting, free agency that we have ever done next offseason.
Again, total transparency. The content would be crazy watching Vladimir Guerrero Jr.
I don't want it, though.
But my heart and my soul, I'm split. My heart and my soul, I just want this. I want this done in an hour.
Yeah.
I want this done in an hour.
Just get it over with. We don't need to think about it. Build our team. Yeah. That's the foundation.
And right now, guys, until that 11th or the 17th, 11 more days, we're going to be having podcasts and live streams watching along. Hopefully, we get a Vladimir Guerrero Jr. extension done.
We're on Vladdy Watch officially now, everybody. Now Pete Alonso's a Met. We are on Vladdy Watch. You guys let us know your thoughts about all this in the comments down below. Please hit that like button, smash the subscribe button. $3 a month, become a YouTube member. Shout out and thank you to all of our current YouTube members. You guys are amazing.
Guys, thank you so much for watching.
And as always,
go Jays, go!